let's talk a little bit about object-oriented programming. For those of you who aren't that familiar with that type of programming, the simplest way I want you to think about this is, an object or a thing, and this entity will have different characteristics or properties about it. So for example, let's look at a car. Okay, so we have a little car down here, a little silver car, and this car has some properties, right? It's a BMW. A property might be its current speed, how fast it's traveling, its color, and its fuel type, right? We could also look at this hotel. We could say, well, that hotel has an address, and it has a special roof type of material. It may have X amount of rooms. It might have a swimming pool that's, there. And so a lot of this data could be, changed into different types of variables. So for example, if you're not familiar with the types of data that's out there, there's strings, right? And a string might be a word. So like a BMW is a string. And current speed could just be 45, not miles per hour, but just 45, and that would be an integer. And then we could also have something like, let's think here. Like our hotel, we could say, does it have a swimming pool? And a swimming pool could be either true or false, and we call that a Boolean variable. Okay, so these are properties that we have of an object. Well, in our object, we have these things called events, right? And in the case of this car, an event might be we turn the car on, or we brake, or we accelerate, or things like that, okay? And when we do that, when these things happen, for example, when we brake and we want to slow down, we have to change these properties. We have to change the current speed down to 5 miles an hour or something like that. And so that's what we call methods, okay? And a method is just like a function. If you've done any kind of programming before, a function will say, take the current speed and change it higher or lower based on something, right? And so when we have these objects, we can assign things to them. We can assign properties. We can change those properties through methods, and those methods get called by events, okay? So I want you to think about that as far as like a car goes, right? Like a hotel could be, a method could be change booking, right? And the event could be like a customer hits submit on a change booking, and it changes the method and changes the open amount of rooms available. Maybe we have 20 open rooms and it goes down to 19. So that's a little bit about objects and kind of how they work. Now, when we have a web page, okay, I want you to think of that document as an object. And that document has, different things assigned to it. We also have other objects. Another object might be like the window that you use. It might have a different where you've kind of scrolled to. It might have a URL, assigned to it, things like that. So let's talk about the document itself, the document object, or what we often refer to this as the DOM, or the document object model. Now that's really important. You'll probably hear like DOM manipulation or this DOM tree or something like that, but that just refers to as a document, your web page of HTML, that's an object, and it's a model that we've built out, okay? So when you are using the internet and you go get a web page, your browser goes out and fetches that web page, the server returns the HTML, and before it's ever displayed to you, your browser builds a model of that document, or called the DOM, and it changes every time you visit a new web page. And this DOM here, you can see where we have the doc type. We have your HTML tags, opening head tags, opening body tags, and all the content within. And it builds out this tree structure that looks something like this. Now this is important because on this object, we can go specify, we can say, I want to go look at the table and I want to change its background color. Or I want to say if someone clicks on a table, something happens. And again, in order to add that interactivity, we have to be able to manipulate certain parts of your page. And the DOM allows us to do that. We also, let's show you an example here. This one basically says go out and look on the document. And then we have the method. Okay, remember we said kind of methods are like functions. They change something. And they're just changing the document to say hello world. That's all that's happening here. It's a very simple example of JavaScript using the document object model to make a change. Now you remember I told you there's two objects that are kind of more famous. Now there's lots of objects and different things out there, and you can create your own objects and manipulate them whatever you want. But two that are kind of global that come built in are, one's your document, okay, your web page itself, and number two, we also have the window. Okay, on this one you can see we're looking inside of our window and we're using the method scroll to, and we're going to scroll on the x-axis, because this is the y-axis, over 500 pixels. Let's go over 100 pixels instead and look at that. And so when I click on that, you can see how it scrolled for us and changed that at that location. So that's a good example of the DOM and as well as the window object model, and kind of what both of those are. We can also do, when we're talking about the window object model, we'll say window.alert. And we learned a little bit about alerts before. But alerts are actually, if you don't put the window dot, it just assumes you're using the window alert. So if I say hello world like this, and I put in quotations, do that and we run it, you can see how that comes up and then changes this over. So again, that's just a window object model, but we use the DOM a lot, and we're going to refer back to that quite a bit in future videos. So make sure you understand the concept that we are building this model of your web page, and we can choose different parts of it, and we'll show you how to choose those and manipulate them. And again, an object is made of events, methods, and properties.